Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special program and interview tonight. As you can see, I actually put this show under the banner of To an Imperfect Union. And I haven't used this tag for a while, but I thought with tonight's guest, this would be a very appropriate title to put it under. And although it is still within keeping with the upcoming election, I thought that there were some very myths and things that we should debunk about this particular. Uh, I don't want to use. I'll loosely use the word organization. It's not organized like the NAACP or anything like that, but we do have someone in that can actually tell us a little more about that, and that's my guest tonight, Mr. Luis-Enrique Marquez. Good evening, sir.
Mr. King, and not to be rude, but my name is pronounced Luis, sir.
Luis?
Luis, yes, sir.
Okay,
Not
sorry
Luis.
about that. Okay.
No worries. How are you doing tonight?
I'm actually doing well. I'm down here in San Diego, and not a lot to complain about. The weather. It's October, and the weather is it's not like I would be back in Pittsburgh or upstate New York, so I'm fine. How are you?
Wonderful. The weather here in Portland is beautiful. It's gray. It's rainy. It's just like we like it here. It's just beautiful.
Yes, sir. I started out. I made a statement, but I tried to clarify it when I referred to Antifa as an organization, and when I said that, I clarified that it's not like the NAACP or something of that nature, but it is actually well. Instead of me telling you, why don't you tell us?
Thank you. I think the thing that binds anti-fascists is ideology. The ideology of being free, and not being told how to live, to be perfectly frank. I think that's the one thing that anti-fascists that I come across, we all share that common belief. And I think that's a core belief of anti-fascism.
So, as I stated, I think a lot of people have a misconception of Antifa, and that is that it is this organization, that people can, like point to and say this is Antifa or that is Antifa, uh, and I think that that's a very much misconception. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think so, yes. Well, there are various groups around the country that use the anti-fascist name or the abbreviation. They're all independent of each other. They're all comprised of people who believe amongst themselves, have a set of beliefs or a set of praxis, right? For example, I'm an anarchist. So, but yeah, I mean, so every group is different. They're all independent of each other. And I speak for one. I speak only for myself, for example, as an anti-fascist. What my worldview is.
Okay, now it's usually described in the media as an involvement without a face. Uh, how would you describe its heart?
Well, first of all, I My face is here, so the myth of us not having faces is out of the water. I think the heart of any anti-fascist is to live in a caring world, to live in a free world. As I said, anti-fascism is a movement that is based around freedom. We all want to be free, right? None of us want to be told what to do, right?
Correct.
And so when you look at, we'll say, modern day anti-fascism going from the 1920s, that evolved under worlds that had literal fascism and authoritarian, as in communist ideologies. Right? So nobody wants to be told what to do or how to live your life. And under those regimes, people were told how to live their lives and what they could and could not do.
Okay, so when people think about Antifa, what do you want them to picture beyond, what they see in the protests, or what they hear in the mainstream media?
Right. That's a really great question. Thank you. Anti-fascism is really broad, right? So protests and street actions make up probably 1%, maybe, of what it is to be anti-fascist. Anti-fascists are working in the houseless shelters. Anti-fascists are working with at-risk youth. Anti-fascists are taking food to people, checking in on their neighbors, picking up garbage in the street, doing things to make the community, this world, this country a better place. That's what should be thought about when we think about anti-fascism, is the strive to make a better world.
Okay, so now why don't we hear about those programs, or are those programs carried on? Um, I'll say without necessarily, like, like having to distribute food like the Red Cross or something like that. Are you also an independent group when it comes to discharging these various uh, uh, things for the neighborhood, or things to improve your neighborhood?
I would assume so. Of course, with any collaborative effort, sometimes I'll be like, oh, let's do something. I want to feed people, and then maybe I'll invite and involve some of my friends and see what we can come up with, and then go feed the people. Um, yeah. So a lot of it is just trying to make the world a better place. That's what we're here for.
Now, also a lot of the people my age, and they're uh, I'm 77. And when we think of fascism, we think of Mussolini, or a third world republic. Uh, how aware should we be of these anti-fascists, these fascists that hide in plain view?
Ugh. I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking what
Well,
fascism is, or are you trying to
no.
make?
What I'm trying to see is how do we identify fascism when it's not really carried under that banner? Maybe it's
Okay,
carried
I see what you're saying. So you're right. Today's fascism is a lot more subtle. Right, exactly. Today's fascism isn't as blatant or in your face as, say, Mussolini's fascist party or Hitler's Nazi party was, but at the same time, it is right. Any anything, any movement is designed to take other people's freedoms away is fascism, or at best authoritarianism. Right? Like, why are we trying to take people's freedoms away? Why aren't we trying to make more things free, more people free? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. Definitely. You're talking to a black man. I mean, yes, sir. It definitely makes sense. Uh,
right?
so, what is a reaction to a common to political figure, or is there a broader long-term mission at play?
I don't want to date my age, but I've been an anti-fascist for a long time, right?
Well, we try not to
I
play
like
the ageism card here.
like the thing is, it for me, and again, I only speak for myself. And in my worldview as an anti-fascist, for me, it's a long game. For me, we look back at civil rights in this country, which was 1966, 1967 ish, right? And we try to
I
see
thought, okay, okay. The Civil Rights Act of '64.
64, okay? And we still see that we have a long way to go. We've come a long way, but we have an awful long way to go. And until we achieve those goals, for example, I don't think I'm going to stop.
Okay, all right.
So it's not, we see the racist things in Hillary Clinton and in her husband when they termed the coin super predator, which was targeted for youth of color. We see the racism in Joe Biden when he spoke of anti-busing laws and didn't want his children being bused with animals from the jungle. So it's a long game. It's a long-term game.
All right. I would definitely agree with that. As I've already dated myself, so yeah, it is a very long struggle. But fascism is a strong word that gets thrown around often. How does Antifa define and spot it in today's society? And the second part of this is, are there specific moments or actions in recent years that scream fascism to you, besides the two, the ones that you've already given?
We can look at Richard Spencer, and let's not forget his infamous moment of throwing up Z Kyles praising Donald Trump. We can see the elements of the racist right wing and their praxis, meaning their philosophy, attaching themselves to Donald Trump. So if fascists attach themselves to you, that means they like what you're saying. That means they like what you're doing. That means they're into you. And if fascists agree with you, you know, so yeah, we see fascism all the time. We see President-elect Donald Trump saying he is willing to turn the American military upon American citizens. We see him calling people such as myself the enemy within. Because mark you, when he's talking about that, he's talking about people like me, people that came out and stood up against him for 4 years. We see elements of fascism when he had U.S. Marshals brutally murder a man in Washington. They could have arrested that man. He could have stood trial. But Trump wanted him murdered, so he was murdered. These are elements of fascism we see, amongst others.
Well, let's talk about Antifa and Trump uh, and the GOP. Why does Antifa view him as such a dangerous figure? And is he the symbol of a target threat? Or is it something personal about him or his style of leadership?
Okay, so let me say again, I speak only for myself. with that being said, I'm not against Republicans. I'm not against conservatives. We can have political debates. Where we cannot have a debate about what is not open for debate is hatred. Okay? So, with that being said, we're not against Republicans. I'm not against a Republican, right? But if you hang out with fascists again and you agree with their line of thinking, which the GOP, a big part of it seems to be in line with him, I'm going to assume that you're against everything I stand for. Do you understand? So, like, if you are a member of the GOP and you support presidential candidate Donald Trump, who says, like, hey, I'm going to use American troops against American citizens to root out the enemy within. Well, that's a fascist ideology. That's a fascist idea. And if you agree with that, then you and I probably have nothing to talk about. But there are plenty of Republicans, plenty of conservatives who have come out against their party and spoken about the fascism of Donald Trump. Okay, and so why did Donald Trump get everybody's opinion? Because this man came out and was contrary to what this country stands for. This country is all about opening up our borders to immigrants. On the Statue of Liberty, it says, give us your weak, give me your poor, give me your tired. Right? This man came out against everything that was American. Being free, freedom of thought, freedom of speech. It riled people up. This man sent federal troops to a U.S. city. I know. I got shot in the head by one of those federal troops. I know because I have a grenade that a federal troop fucking threw at us. Excuse my language.
No problem, Mr. M.A.
So that's why we're against him. That's why I'm against him. Me.
He's also referred to Antifa as domestic terrorists. What's your response to that?
You're only a terrorist if you lose.
Okay. It's very simple.
I mean, I myself haven't lost. But I've seen people that support Donald Trump that I fought in the streets go to jail. Break the law, go to jail. Man struggling to win. We haven't lost. I haven't lost. The left hasn't lost. So I don't consider myself a terrorist.
But once again, as you've said many times, here's a man that's willing to send federal troops. And he has, as you said, Portland was an example. Anyone that watched your interview on Vice was certainly, learned a lot of things about how troops can be deployed and how different weapons can be used against a crowd. So when he proclaims you domestic terrorist, is he not putting a target on your back?
I myself have had a target on my back. I myself have had a
You
target
specifically. Not. I mean, as you identify with the group, that means you specifically.
So, a couple of things there. I identify with an ideology, not a group.
Well, excuse me. I'm sorry.
So I've had a target on my back since 2016. In my book, An Anti-Fascist Memoir, I speak of my house being firebombed. I speak of being shot at. I speak of my daughter being terrorized, as well as my partner at the time. And as you said, he sent troops here and we battled them. They went home. I'm still in my home city. So, for example, and I only speak for myself, if they come back, I'll be back. And if I happen to die for standing up, there have been so many people, better people than me, that have come before me and have died in the cause of freedom. I'm I'm not a martyr. I'm not looking to die or anything. But if it happens for the cause of people being free, I can be okay with that.
That's a very powerful statement. A lot of people are not willing, to die for their beliefs.
You know what, sir? Your generation, literally black people and brown people fought for us. And we're not going to let the small gains that you guys were blessed to make, we're not going to let that go backwards. I'm not willing to see that go backwards.
Once again, a very powerful statement. Because I have, on a few occasions, lost faith, and that being, how many strides have we made since 1964? I'm still waiting for a John Lewis Voting Act. I'm still waiting for immigration laws on the border. Gerrymandering has actually cut off, if not cut off, my right to vote altogether. Has certainly diminished it in a lot of parts of the South. I look back and there are days when I compare 2024 to 1964.
I can see that.
So kind of moving on, talking about political strategy and visions beyond the protest. With the rise of the right wing populists, do you believe a new political force, a third party perhaps, needs to emerge?
You know, I often think about that question. And then I think about things like the Constitution and the framework, and it would just be nice. I mean, I think a third party would help. And to find some kind of like governing coalition, I think that would be amazing. But I also think that people change, right? I change, you change. We're not the same men that we were 20 years ago. I would hope so. And with that in mind, I think that countries change and that we're not the same country we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So in my personal view, what I would like to see is I would like to see a constitutional convention every 50 years, every 75 years, something where delegates can get together and we can use what's still useful and get rid of what's not useful. That's me, right? So I think that would be a great idea.
And do you think that, I think 25, I've seen so many changes in the last 25 years. I'm not sure, maybe every 10 years. with the way the technology is
right? We could do that. We could do every 10 years. I mean, for Christ's sakes, we live in a country where the Equal Rights Amendment still isn't a constitutional amendment. So women don't really have equal rights in this country. They have the tradition of equal rights. It's not enshrined in law, and that can be taken away at a moment's notice. Right? Wouldn't it be nice if every 10 years we got together and made, changes that worked for this country?
yes, that would be nice, but I also think that would be kind of a utopian type of an idea. Also, uh, uh,
Really? Why?
well, I mean, first of all, if you're going to do that, are you going to invite everyone? Are you going to elect certain officials? I mean, how do we get to that constitutional delegation? Do we do it like the colonials did it? Which I think would invite the same type of corruption that we already have.
I mean, I think every state would send their delegates and, try to, you know, I think at that point it would be up to the states to send people that they believed would do the people's business. And you know, battle it out, I guess.
Would you say that you would be more of a proponent of states' rights?
um, I'm a proponent
I,
of
I,
democracy.
I know that's a double-edged sword. There, I kind of understand it.
I'm a proponent of democracy. I'm a proponent of human rights. Of there is a baseline for how we treat people and each other, right? So, um, I believe that the people's will should be heard. And in democracy, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's the will of the people.
Uh, and I mean, I think that's another misconception is that people think that we live in a democracy and we actually don't.
No, we live in a representative republic.
And I think that's something that should be pointed out. Everybody, everyone doesn't quite understand the difference.
And if you don't mind my saying there, the reason we do not live in a democracy was so that we could cater to a very select group of people and that class retain power. And it's worked.
So many left-leaning movements aim for legislative change. Does Antifa direct action approach complement that, or do you see yourselves or yourself as a different path entirely?
So, can we talk about direct action there for a minute? Direct action is exactly what it says. It is chasing or confronting homophobes, transphobes, racists, um, and making them leave. Do I believe in direct action? Absolutely 100%. Which means that if you are a transphobe, if you are a homophobe, if you are a racist, and we come across each other and you are actively trying to promote your agenda, I will do whatever I can do in my power to shut that down and to not have you be heard and to have you leave. So, do I believe in direct action? Yep, it's been proven to work 100%. And at the same time, do I think that, in my personal opinion, do people need legislative change? Absolutely.
In your opinion, how do direct action and traditional politics work together, if at all?
I'm not sure that I understand that question.
Well,
Let me,
as you said, direct action. If you see someone that is directly in contrary to your beliefs, that you will take direct action. Whereas in traditional politics, you have to wait for legislation. You have to how a bill becomes a law, so forth and so on. Is there some way that direct action has a uh, direct influence on a political platform that you might?
so I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know any politicians, right? I know
Okay.
contrary. I mean, the right wing would like to paint pictures that the left is all unified, is all on the same team, and they meet and have this agenda, and that's just really not the way it works, right? So, does direct action directly affect legislative action? I have no idea. How would I know, right? What I do know is that anti-fascists around this planet that engage in direct actions are keeping their community safe. And this is proven. Does one directly affect the other? I don't know. But do I support, things like laws that help people be free and enshrine and protect their freedoms? Of course I do. Right? That's
Well,
what I said. So right, like that's a good thing. Do I support laws that take away freedom? No, that's a bad thing, right? But either way, do these Nazis or these people that are running around looking to harm or harass marginalized people, they don't really listen to laws. So I'm willing to go out in the streets and confront them there and make sure that people are safe. Does that answer the question?
yes, it does. Yes, it does. So, what does Antifa ideal America look like?
Oh, I have no idea. We've spent the last 45 minutes or so talking about like the brightness of anti-fascists, right? So I mean, I have no idea. I can tell you what my ideal America would look like, I guess my utopia, but that's just me.
Well, you're the person that we're interviewing, so well, I guess more directly would be what is your goal?
Well,
What do
we say that
what
we
does
say that
your America look like?
we say that we're the wealthiest country in the world. And yet our citizens have nothing. Right? The working class is suffering. In my ideal America, we would have things like free education. We would have things like free housing. We would have things like free healthcare. Don't get it wrong. I'm not saying that this free housing consists of like multi-bedroom houses. No, a studio, a one-bedroom apartment, a housing that we would take, that we would look after people. And if people wanted to better themselves, because we give you free housing and we give you free education, you can go to school and you can learn to be a doctor if you want. You have the support. Right now, people are struggling. I know so many single people and families that are struggling, working 2, 3 jobs and barely getting by. We've seen the cost of groceries grow up. So I think I would like to see a country that cares for its citizenship, that instead of being a country that exports things murder people like bombs and weapons that we see being used against people of color, for example, in Gaza, that we would bring people health care, how to bring water to them, help these communities, because we would have a lot more friends on the world stage that were the case. We could make this world a better place. We could harness our collective strengths and make a better world. not utopia, and who wants to live in a utopia, right? Because utopians are fucking boring, right? And democracies and freedom they're dirty, right? Not because not everybody's going to agree, but the majority. If not everybody agrees, but everyone's like, hey, let's abolish racism, let's make it illegal, then that's the law of the land, right? So for me, I would like to see a country that takes care of itself, that takes care of its citizens, that actually educates brown and black children, and instead of having an education to prison pipeline, has an education to university pipeline.
Wow.
I would.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I should go on. You get me going on that soapbox. It's like the Energizer Bunny. I can.
No. I mean, that's why we have you on the show. We want people to see your passion and what you're about. That's why this interview is so important.
Thank you so much. I'm tired, man. I am tired of living in supposedly the wealthiest country in the world and seeing babies, people begging in the streets for pennies with babies. Aren't we all sick of that shit? Shouldn't those mothers be housed instead of fucking spending? I mean, how much is the Iron Dome in Israel every time it's used? I've been seeing numbers go off. Shouldn't that money be spent to take care of our own?
Good points. Very good points. Like I said, from your mouth to God's ear.
I'm tired of murdering people in our name, man. I am tired of it. And yeah, we just live in a country that could solve these things, but instead we go in and we make rifts bigger for corporate agendas.
Well, that's that's even though that's not what America is founded on, it's what America lives upon. But let's talk about some misconceptions and media narratives here. Antifa's image in mainstream media is often chaotic and violent. How do you manage to counter those narratives? And do you think the media has gotten anything right about your movement? Or is it all just spin?
Okay, so a lot of the reason people have misconstrued ideas about anti-fascism as a whole is through one particular gentleman. Perhaps you've heard of him. His name is Andy Ngo. Familiar with him?
Yes, sir.
He's a right-wing journalist. Okay? I am literally the third paragraph of that man's book. Okay? The situation he describes never happened. Ever. It's a good story. Andy Ngo knows nada, zero, zilch about anything about anti-fascism. And that's clear. For example, Andy Ngo named me one of the leaders of a well-known anti-fascist group. Okay? He sued me for my part in his supposed attack. And that got dismissed. My name got dismissed and thrown out because all you have to do is come to Portland. You can come to Portland for 10 minutes and find out that everything that man says in his book is a pack of lies. But, the media likes to run with what's sexy. And when you see protesters clashing in the streets, either with each other or against the police, that gets eyes. That's sexy, right? So people saw innocent protesters dressed in black. Why were they dressed in black? Because they were afraid of repercussions coming back upon them. So people decided to use the tactic of black bloc. And let me be clear. Just because you were in black bloc at a protest doesn't mean that you were an anti-fascist. You could have been Anybody. You're in black bloc. Who knows who you are? You could be a right winger. You could be. I've seen police officers be black bloc, right? I've seen, so you could be an agitator. So there was this narrative of there's a group of people, they dress in black and they're violent fighting the police because that's what the media wanted to focus on. I did interviews during those times. Nobody really asked me about the work that people did. Nobody's, I have media fucking groups contact me a lot asking me, they want to see arms training. They want to see this or that. Nobody wants to go out and see people pass out food. Nobody wants to see, for example, what did anti-fascists do when COVID hit? They started making sanitizer. They were taking out food. They were organizing food drives. How do I know? Because I was a part of it. I was doing my part. When the fires hit here in Oregon, what did anti-fascists do? They stopped protesting in the street instantly and started helping people. What did the right wing do? They went and grabbed their guns because they were afraid that people like me were going to come terrorize people's houses. So I don't really think that there's a lot that mainstream media gets right about anti-fascism at all. I think that there are certain programs, certain channels, Vice being amongst them. They've had decent programs. They've also had programs going the other way. So, and that's because I think the media is trying to define something that is indefinable. It is really hard that if you identify as an anti-fascist, people want to put you into a group. And you know what? For fuck's sakes, my grandfather fought Nazis in Germany and came back with SS trophies. That dude's an anti-fascist. I'm in the same strain as my grandfather, right? So there's not a lot that the media gets right. Again, sorry.
Oh no, that is precisely what my interview is about. Getting your point of view. As you can see, I wrote these questions for you, and I had you look at them first before.
They are wonderful questions. They are,
So, what do you think? If you could rewrite the headlines, what would they say?
Well, I guess it would depend on.
You've spoken about a lot of things that people don't realize or that are very close to my heart when you talk about distributing food and making sure that neighborhoods and people are taken care of. And this is kind of what I'm all about. I welcome your thoughts and your opinions. This is not about judgment. This is about what your movement is about and trying to understand what it's about rather than listening to a third party.
Right. Well, I guess if I could rewrite the headline, I was sitting here thinking about it as you were speaking just now. And I think I would tell you something. I would tell the people something that I'm sure growing up you heard. I most definitely did. And so I guess my headline would be anti-fascists. Don't judge a book by its cover. Meaning that, like, if people want to judge anti-fascism, learn what it's about. Learn the broadness of it. Learn that, believe it or not, even a lot of people who identify with different political beliefs than I do identify as anti-fascist. So it's a pretty broad thing. So we shouldn't judge it just by its cover, and we should look to it. There are many wonderful books about anti-fascism. The Anti-Fascist Handbook by Mark Bray would be one. Militant Anti-Fascism by M. Testa would be another. There is a book written by early day ARA members, which is the Anti-Racist Action in the 80s and 90s that combated boneheads here, Nazis in my town, called It Did Happen Here. Amazing book, right? And in fact, one of the gentlemen who helped write that book wrote the preface for my book about the night that he was involved in the murder of a Nazi. And you have to get the book to read about it, but it's a great preface. That's all I can say.
Oh, well, tell us about your book.
Well, there are a lot of books about Antifa, anti-fascism, a lot about the philosophy. My book's not about the philosophy. My book's about my personal experiences from election night when Trump won in 2016 to election night when Biden won in 2020, talking about the experiences that we had here in Portland, talking about what it was like to take the streets, what it was like to be scared, to think that you were going to die every time you left your house. I talk about actions in my book, and then I put in a corresponding newspaper article that talks about that particular action that I'm talking about in my book. As well as in my book, we had a mole in the Proud Boys, and Proud Boys fill out applications. At least the chapter up here in the Northwest does, which is weird. And you can see the things that they had to do to become Proud Boys and attain their levels. Some of these guys are accused of almost attacking cops. Some of them are employed with ICE, and I published their applications in my book, as well as here, I believe it was 2000, off the top of my head, 2018, we had an activist named June Davies who became informant, a CI for the police. Their affinity group got a hold of all the texts that they had communicated with the police and turned them over to me, and I published them all. So it's the first time that is published that we can see how an informant is turned by the police and becomes an informant.
So, was there a lot of kickback from your book?
There's some. It's weird. We have a 5-star rating on Amazon, and people, I am grateful and humbled at how well it's doing. To be perfectly frank with you, and part of every sale of my book goes to help the people. So the best part of it is, like, I've given people money for college. I've given people money to help keep their lights on, to feed people, to get better from surgery, you know, to buy medicine. It's, for me, that's the best part of it. I dig helping people. And so the fact that people are buying my book and that I can take money from my book and go help directly people that need it is the best part.
Now, some people would think that you're one step above communism. What do you say to them?
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Any political ideology that has gulags, re-education camps, that tries to tell you how to live your life, right, like, is wrong. I'm not for it. I'm an anarchist, right? So I'm for people's freedoms. Communism, as far as I can see, is the leftist version of fascism, right? It is just as repressive. Mao was a piece of shit. He said some good things, right? But by that token, a broken clock tells the time twice a day. Stalin was a piece of crap, right? I again, broken clock syndrome. I don't see any good communist leaders. Well, no, let me take that back. I do like some of the things that Castro did for his people, but Castro wasn't necessarily a communist either. He was an opportunist who became a communist, and I'll say it here, Castro betrayed the revolution, and that's a fact because he wasn't a communist when he finished the revolution. So, but I do think that Cuba did some and has some amazing things for its people. They have some cures for cancer. They can survive hurricanes. Their citizens don't die in mass when there's a hurricane like ours do. But so yeah. So to those that think that anti-fascists are communists, I mean, I'll say it, and this will probably get me blowback, but I think anti-fascists that are communists are misled. And I think it's oxymoron to call yourself both things because in my view, both they're opposed to each other, right? They fight each other. So that's like you or me being white supremacists. That's fucking weird. I mean, it's not quite that way, but it's
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But
yeah.
when you talk about, when you talk about, feeding the poor, giving back to your neighborhood, these are things that the right grab upon, to slant them once again. Anything for the people and by the people is either, usually tagged with that label, and that's why I asked you that particular question.
You know what? Do you know what, sir? I just want to quickly answer a question that you asked earlier because it just hit me. I got to one example. You asked where direct action affects legislative action.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The Panthers. The free lunch program, right? That started off as a result of direct action, a group of people trying to feed other kids. And we see that program has been picked up by legislative governments all across this country. In fact, that I believe Vice President-elect Tim Walz has instituted that in Minnesota that everybody gets free food. Yeah. That is an example of direct action becoming legislative. So it took me a minute. Apologies, but there we go.
No,
I think that's one of the greatest examples.
Yes, I didn't want to quite direct you in that direction because, as I said, a lot of times, although groups sometimes have the same, end result, like you said, the school lunch programs. Now we have them. Tim Walz has instituted the program in the state of Minnesota. And we have it a lot of other places. I believe we have the same or some semblance of that here in California also.
Right. But, and the Panthers, they did a lot of amazing things. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, they did a lot of amazing things. I think they're also a great example of betrayal movement as well. The Panthers unfortunately had a lot of criminal informants in their organization and were willing to betray each other. And I think that is the greatest tool of the white-backed government is the ability to use us against ourselves. Right? You're from California. You live in California. You're a black man. You know that Latinos and blacks don't really, there's some friction there. And that's because we're fighting over the same limited resources. Precisely. Right? To feed and give our families. Because the man knows how to play us against each other. right? For these same, and while we are battling and dying and fucking killing each other, these are over here laughing and profiting.
Oh yes, yes.
So
One
yeah,
when I first started my programs, I had the Black Panther Party here in San Diego. They were weekly participants in our program. And as you say, one of the greatest uh, uh, detriments to our programs and to our organizations are ourselves and CIs and you know wannabes and things like that. You'll
right.
get me.
And the hood glorifies ignorant shit. You know what I'm saying? The hood life, people that want to be gangsters and all that shit. That shit is ignorant. Ignorance, man. Like our children are out there glorifying fucking ignorance, man. You know, like
I, I have nephews and parts of my family that were caught up in this and it's precisely what you're saying and a lot of it I kind of took upon myself because when I came home from the service I turned to a life of crime and it was, it's still glorified, when I walk through the hood, AOG, so forth and so on. And, that's not the image, that's not, as you say, people change. That's not who I am now, but I
right.
have
And you
more,
change, you learn.
yeah, I have,
Malcolm X had to change. We have to change. We have to morph right into our true beings. But I live in a society. I look at celebrities like Snoop Dogg or Ice Cube. Don't get me wrong; those boys got flow. They got skills. They're shit, right? But what are they famous for? They're famous for telling stories about killing their own. They're famous for telling stories about beating women. They're famous for this horrible stuff. And while we promote them, we're not promoting people that are just trying to make our communities better. People that have free food. People that are trying to squash hate. You know what I'm saying?
well, it's, in Snoop Dogg's case, uh, I have to come to his defense because at the end, he did, start providing youth programs. He did start taking care of his own, so to speak.
Sure, he
Uh,
did start. You're right. He's got that. He's got the football program that has saved countless of lives and sent many people to the league. Right. You
yeah,
you are absolutely correct. And I
yeah.
apologize. I just you know
No, but no, I understand what you're saying.
people
When
see black and
we
brown youth and they see black and brown men
and they
and
think gangster rap. That's what they
and
think
and,
of.
and
They
they
think
and they
gangster rap.
think and they think the worst of both of us.
Oh
They
yeah,
think
yeah.
of both of us. But meanwhile, we're too busy fighting each other. And we need to see that we have more in common than we do opposite, and that we are fighting over fucking scraps
Right, right.
when we should
Right.
be at the table too. We should be
Uh,
at the table.
fighting. What's the phrase? Fighting for scraps from the master's table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Waiting for something to hit the floor. And
Yeah.
like you said, we should be participating in the feast. Uh, you know, uh, it's okay for us to serve the feast, but it's not okay for us to attend the feast.
Right. And that's the thing. And that's what anti-fascism in a nutshell is about, is that there is room, freedom, and room for everybody to eat at this table. That if we've got more people that need to eat than we got room, let's build the table longer because we have those resources. I've heard it say that the number one export of America is the second Bill of Rights, right? We see it that it's all over Europe, and we see it in country building that this country does. That everybody has the right to housing, education, healthcare, gainful employment, but we don't practice it here. They say it's our number one export, but we don't get it here.
Well, if you look, that's very true. If a country goes, to conflict against this country, it inevitably gets the foreign aid and everything that it needs to rebuild itself. Whereas, we usually come in, after that, or a second thought, especially if you're a minority. Uh, but I want to stick with the idea of uh, education. And when I say education, I'm going back to the statement that you made about getting the scraps from the table. With all of the technology that is available to us, and with um, uh, well, let's go there. With all of the technology that is available to us, do you think that our distrust of mainstream society has actually kept this battle on a secondary front rather than bringing it to the masses? And would it make any difference if we brought it to the masses? Do the masses really care?
You know, I think so. Um, but then look at the number of black or brown homes that have internet capability, these technologies, right? I'm talking to you on an Apple computer with a cool little microphone here. But I know people in the hood that don't have that shit, right? Like I take my privilege, some of my material wealth for granted. I remember when someone saw my iWatch, and they were all blown away by it. It's just
Yeah.
like, so I think that, right. So what I think is going on with our education, I think black and brown youth get a subpar education that is destined to train them for slave labor, for what amounts to slave labor, right? They're being undereducated to be maids, to be gardeners, to be service workers. There's nothing wrong with those jobs. They should have their education to be doctors, to be lawyers, to be community leaders. And we have, because of the class structure in this country, we have a separation of who's getting what education. So I don't even think that the masses, if have access to half the technology that's really out there.
But everyone has one of these, an
You would
iPhone
think.
or an Android phone. You could do. I mean, you could do almost anything with this that you can do on a computer or a laptop
I
nowadays.
mean, so some people have them, and some people, like, have them and just have phone service. Some people have them and like don't even, because they can't afford to pay for the internet portion of their phone. Right? I recently saw a study that said working class, it was talking about the loneliness of Americans, and that people that were college educated and wealthy were more likely to use public resources like parks and libraries, and that working class people tend to shy away from them and isolate themselves more, right? So while I think technology is awesome, and I love playing Madden with some dude in New York while I'm in Portland, right? I also think that it's a detriment, right? For example, when you look at what the Chinese government has instituted with TikTok versus what happens with TikTok here. Again, I'm not in China, so what do I know? I've read a couple of stories, and that the Chinese government regulates the use of TikTok. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day to children under 18, and that most of it is educational shit versus what goes on here. Right? So I think that we can do a better job of educating. Now, what does that look like? I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I don't think it would be hard to get a diverse panel of people that are educated in that field and have them come up with something. Right? That like, I mean, I'm not. I have some ideas, but I'm uneducated. So I think that we can appoint people who have dedicated their lives to that subject to improve on our education.
Another question and this is something that I really didn't include, but once again, being a preacher's son, I find this very interesting. And that, how does Antifa think when it comes to the separation of church and state?
Well, again, speaking for just myself, absolutely. Absolutely. I think all religion is ridiculous. Okay. Now, does that mean that I think it's worthless? Absolutely not. I think that if you have something in your life that makes you a better person and makes you give a shit about other people, I think that's a great thing. I think if that thing tells you that only your religion is great and that only you are awesome and everybody else sucks, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a bad thing, right? And as an indigenous person, because although I am Latino and I come from El Salvador, I come from the people of Inca, which is an indigenous tribe, an indigenous nation there. I don't like people say on the left, oh, let's bring back the old gods. No, the old gods are just as misogynistic and just as sexist as the new ones, right? So for me, yeah, there needs to be a separation of church and state. I have my spiritual beliefs. I don't bring them into my politics. I don't need anybody else to bring theirs into their politics too. Have your thing, do your thing, enjoy it, and invite me. Tell me about it if I want to hear about it. Don't try and push your shit on me, whatever that is. So,
do you think certain parts of the church have been weaponized against Antifa?
I think a certain part of the church has been weaponized against people of color. I think even churches of color preach a doctrine of subjugation and a doctrine of let's suffer today because we are going to be rewarded tomorrow. And no, like tomorrow, like what should you say tomorrow? He says tomorrow will care for itself. You worry about today, right? You worry about what's in front of you, right? But I mean, I'm still dealing with a country where I'm pretty sure most white people believe in a white Jesus.
Okay.
Right? I mean, yes. You know what I'm saying? So if you can't be real about what your savior looked like and what your dude, your savior didn't hang out with the Pharisees. He hung out in the hood, bro. He hung out with hoes and pimps. He hung out with fucking fentanyl addicts and cleaned those dudes up. Right? And he wasn't white. He was a black man doing it, right? So if you can't even be real about your Jesus, then how the fuck are you going to bring it into the fucking politics?
Well, hey, as you know, as an indigenous person, that was to show you the righteousness of the white people, of the white race.
But
I
here's the
mean,
thing, dude. My
hey,
ancestral gods are just as ridiculous. My ancestral gods wanted to kill virgins, wear skin. Maybe okay, cool, whatever. And was misogynist, right? Like our political, the political system of my ruler was that their political system was that you had one ruler who could intercede with a god, and that's why that dude was king. Fuck that. If there's a God that exists, I'm pretty sure he'd get at all of us. You know? That's all
yeah.
I'm saying.
Like I said, I've been through a lot of different stages in my lifetime, and it kind of amazes me. But let's look forward at Antifa's role in the future, at least from your point of view. With U.S. politics becoming more polarized, do you think Antifa's role is growing, shrinking, or evolving in the near future? And what do you think Antifa's place will be in the next election cycle, which is only a few days away?
So I was on Lars Larson a couple weeks ago, and he asked me kind of the same question. He asked me what I thought was going to happen. And he told me that the answer I gave him he thought was kind of ridiculous because I said, I really don't know.
Well, what's ridiculous about that?
Like for me, I'll say something here, and I'll say something that might scare some of your listeners or viewers, whatever the case is. But I'm spending my time politicizing members. I think gangs are a super important part of any grassroots campaign for change that comes from the people. So what you asked me what Antifa is doing during this time? I don't know, but this anti-fascist is trying to educate people and get them to see what we're really fighting. They're not really fighting each other, and that those people are needed to hold their communities down. Gang leaders aren't stupid. They're smart. They have learned to thrive in a society that is against them. Right? Gangs know their neighborhoods. They know everything that happens in their neighborhoods. Now, why wouldn't we want those people working with and for the benefit of their communities instead of harming their communities? So I think come November, I think it's going to be a shit show for all of us, right? I think one side or the other side is going to hit the streets. I think I really worry about what's going to happen come in 3 weeks. I really worry that this could be the end. Right? Of course, when things die, other things are born. But as we've all seen, labor, that's not a fun time. Right? It is a painful time, and there's a lot of love going on, but there's a lot of pain going on too. I think anti-fascists will continue doing what they've done for 100+ years, which is to care for their communities, which to clothe people, to feed people, to hand sanitizer, to take care of their communities. I think that's what they'll do because that's what they've continued to do. That's what they've done. they've always done, whether anti-fascists have been at the forefront of the media or whether they've been relegated to nothingness. They have been there doing the work. And if you don't see them, they're doing the job. Because you know what? I mean, here's the deal. I know anti-fascists, okay? Like I know people that you would never assume to be anti-fascists, and they are. Like people that have real jobs in corporates and doctors and what have you. And I know mechanics and everywhere in between that are anti-fascists. So we're everywhere. People with this ideology are everywhere. And they care about what happens in their societies. So they're going to work on behalf of their societies.
You know, it's interesting that you talked about gangs, because when I was talking to some of the people in Minneapolis, one of my approaches is that they should approach gang leaders and such, because, as you said, they knew the neighborhood, and not only that, they were probably the most effective leaders in their neighborhood.
Exactly.
But what I found were that the older generations were afraid to talk to the younger generation. How can you be afraid of your kids and your grandkids? What have we done to make our lives, in such a way that we are afraid of our children?
Because you know what? I hate to say it, and I really hate to quote this man, but Kanye said it, right? Kanye said it. What's he say? Dope dealer by dope, crackhead by crack, and the white man gets paid off of all of that, right? That, because we see, our children see what's on TV. They see the ignorance of the ghetto and the flashiness, and they want it. And they don't know where to get it except take it from people that they love and take it from their own neighborhoods. And so they institute fear. And that's where some of the fear comes from. Some of the fear comes from old people being old people, bro. Right? Like, I'm pretty old too, but look at me. I mean, I've got face piercings and tattoos, I had tattoos and shit, right? Like, I see it. When people talk to me, sometimes they have that second pause, right? When I walk a staffy, so people think he's a pit bull. So they see me and my dog walking down the street, right? And it's, they don't realize that my dog is a land hippopotamus. And if you go boo, he's probably going to hide behind me. Dude doesn't even like the rain. He's a prima donna. Doesn't even want to get his paws wet, right? So again, the older generation is scared to talk to the younger generation. But you know what? Bring it back. Don't judge a book by its cover. Because what the fuck did FDR say? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. You're a Steelers fan, bro. Those Steelers, that Iron Curtain of the 70s, they played with grit. They played with fear. And I've heard stories of those dudes being like, yeah, we were scared. We just dug deep in. You can't. Fear stops you. And fear will get you killed.
Yes, sir.
Right? You know what? I hate to say it, and I'll probably get some blowback for this, but let's look at World War II. Right? How many Jewish people went on those trains because they were fearful that they were going to die, and they thought that we just go on these trains and just do what these people want. They won't fuck with us. They'll just leave us alone. Right? We'll live, and we just don't piss these people off. Just do what they say, and we're not going to get fucked with, because they were fearful, right?
True.
What happened to them? Or what happened to the Partisans that didn't make that choice, and they're like, fuck no, give me a stick. I'm going to go to the woods and bash a Nazi. I might die doing it, but my boots will be on. Right? You see my flyer back there, my flag back there. That stands for sharps. That's the subculture I identify as. That's a skinhead. It stands for Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice. Now here's what's going to blow your mind. Skinhead is not a racist thing. Okay? It comes from Jamaica. Nazis co-opted that shit the way we look in the 70s for the English Defense League and blah, 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 blah. So there's a split. I'm a skinhead. For us, a Nazi can never be a skinhead, and a skinhead can never be a Nazi. But the one thing is, I will always die with my boots on, which means that I will not let fear dominate my life. I was scared during the period that I wrote my book, bro. My house was firebombed. My daughter, she is 14 now. She was 6 when it started. You know, like I was shot at twice in the streets, once at point blank range. I was scared to leave my house. But you know what? If I didn't leave my house, my friend, those dudes won.
Right, right.
And you know what I use for inspiration? Because I did every fucking day. God, I'll never forget how scared I was during those days. There's a famous picture of Malcolm dressed in a suit, peeping out his window with a gat in hand. I had a shotgun. I had my Mossberg by my door. And every time I was scared and my friends, dude, it was so bad that my friends wouldn't let me go. I couldn't go anywhere by myself. I had to take people with me. It was horrible. But we don't let fear stop us, because then they win. Someone says, hey, black man, you're not here because it's a white neighborhood. You go back there tomorrow. You might get beat up, but you go back tomorrow. And you go back the next day. And you leave when you're ready to leave, not when other people are ready to leave. And I know we haven't gotten to this, but do you mind if I talk really fast about immigrants?
No, go ahead.
Okay. To those of you that believe in this immigrant crime wave, put your head on your asses. Okay? Let me tell you like this. Do you think that some dude named Juan, Carlos, Jesus, who can't speak English, who's got no paperwork and probably no shoes, looking like shit because that dude just walked 2,000 miles, do you really think the cartel's going to give that dude fucking couple pounds of fucking fentanyl and be like, walk across the border, bro? Or do you think they're going to give the fentanyl to a dude named Kevin, who's probably down there looking touristy, wearing his Izod shirt and looking all American? Because that guy's probably going to get across the border with no problem. These people that come here.
Let's be real about that. Most of our drugs come in through ports of entry. I've never seen an immigrant running across the border with a ton of dope on his back.
Right. And here's the thing, you guys. Can we use words and what they mean, please? These aren't immigrants, okay? These are refugees. Very different. An immigrant, just so you need in case those of you out there need a brief definition, an immigrant makes plans, packs his shit up, says goodbye, and boogies. A refugee is someone who takes their clothes on the back and says, I got to get the fuck out of here right now because I'm going to die and I'm going to go. Okay? So let's understand the differences that some of these people that are refugees are coming over because they're desperate. And why are they desperate? Because of American foreign policy towards Latin American countries over the last 75 years that have propped up dictators, that have propped up gang members. That do you think MS-13 is an El Salvadorian problem? It's a fucking American gang. It's an American problem. The gang was made, created, and bred here. And why was it bred and created here? I'll go ahead and give you a quick little story. Because when Salvadorian immigrants came here in the 80s, fleeing a brutal civil war where people were chopping each other up with machetes, okay? They were fucking picked on and fucked with it by black communities, by Mexican communities, by the communities of Southern California. They didn't want this new group of people coming there and battling for limited resources. So they clicked up and made a gang to protect themselves, okay? And they chopped people up with machetes. Now, I'm not defending them or anything, but I'm sitting here saying that it's ridiculous to blame this problem on another country when it's an American problem. So, why are people coming here? Because, as I said earlier just now, we have supported dictators. We supported the School of the Americas. For those of you that don't know what the School of Americas is, it was a school created by the United States, and governments and militaries in Latin America sent their people to this school to learn torture, to learn to oppress people, to learn to squash democracy on behalf of American interest. So this migrant problem that you are having, or this refugee problem that you all are worried about, is created by your own government. Now, don't get me wrong. As long as we're going to have a country, we're going to have borders and immigration policy. Cool. But let's have a fair one. Do you know what Ronald Reagan did? Ronald Reagan, the most conservative of American presidents, gave 3 million undocumented people amnesty. Okay, that's why it's weird. A lot of Latinos and a lot of older Latinos love Reagan because of that. Right? So what's wrong with giving these people who are here and have been here for years and decades amnesty? Under Reagan's amnesty policy, people had to pay a fine of $350. Do you know how much money that raised? $350 times 3 million? And had to prove that they had no criminal record. What's wrong with that, you guys? Right? Do you guys think that these people, like, is there this whole thing that I'm not aware of, like doctors losing their jobs to foreigners that walk here with no shoes? Is that going on? Like, are CPAs all of a sudden out of jobs because Jesus's and Juan's are taking over CPA jobs? These people are coming here and they're working the jobs that you don't want to work. They're working in the fields of California. Go ahead, sir.
No, I said thank you for pointing that out. I mean, especially here in California, people want their organic vegetables, but there's very few people that want to get out there in the field and pick them.
Right? Yeah, exactly like this man just said. And you wealthy white vegans out there that demand grapes in the off season, where do you think these grapes are coming from? They're coming from countries that are using their land that they could actually grow food on to feed people, to feed your grapes.
The shrimp industry in, I believe it was North Carolina, they had a terrific problem when they couldn't find workers, because that's what these people did. They took the jobs that the rest of us didn't want or wouldn't do.
You know what, sir? I grew up in a day and age. I was just talking about this with some friends that I remember watching Saturday cartoons, watching commercials that praised American Union, America workers. We have left unions, and unions are the great. You know what? There's only one union that sucks, and that's a pig union. Okay? Because that's designed to fucking shelter murderers. Every other union in this country is amazing on behalf of the workers. Look at the dock strike. Those people deserve their money and deserve job security. Right? But you know what? This country is so anti-worker. This country is so anti-working class that there's been a strike in Seattle going on for a month now, stopping a huge corporation, I believe, at a cost of like $1 billion a week or something like that. And they're getting no national attention. And that's the Boeing's worker strike.
Yes. Yes.
And you know what, this group of greedy corporate bigwigs are so greedy that they've decided to fire 10% of their workforce and no media attention. Right? So, but that's a different subject altogether. I get sidetracked because I get so mad. But like, yeah, I mean, back to migration. Pull your head out of your asses, you guys. These guys, migrant communities, refugee communities, especially undocumented communities, they don't want to break the laws because they don't want the heat of the cops because they don't want to get deported. You people
Yes.
are criminalizing a whole group of people who want the same exact thing that you do. They want to work, they want to raise their families, and they want to be loved, just like the rest of us. And they're really not taking your fucking jobs. Stop buying this bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
We've talked about things on this program that have gotten me heated, sir.
hey, look, I appreciate the passion, and if I'm putting forth questions or things that ignite that passion, then so be it. But I do want to ask you, how does Antifa engage with the younger generation who may be disillusioned with traditional projects, politics? And what message are you hoping to pass on to the next wave of activists?
It's a great question. So, I like I grew up listening to a lot of punk and ska and reggae and new wave music, right? So like a lot of political punk, like the Dead Kennedys and stuff. So I kind of like myself just through the music I listen to. You hear an artist that you admire, you look into them, you hear about the books that they read, and you look into these books, and you meet people similar. Um, like anything else, there's this. I don't. Nobody's that I know of or have ever heard of goes out like and tries to bring people. And again, to bring it back to what we talked to earlier, is that every anti-fascist group is independent. Everybody has their own rules for bringing people or whatever they're doing. I don't know any of those rules for those groups. I just live my life, and people recognize me and want to talk to me, and I'll talk to them. Or you can use anything as a tool to spark conversation. So myself, when I talk to young people, that's what I and try to find out where they are. I don't think the most important any activist can lesson that they can learn is that we do this, and it's weird because it's not about self, right? Like this interview that you're giving and we're having and I'm partaking in, it's not about me personally, right? I could be anybody sitting here, right? And so it's not about the great work I do as a person, but it's about the people. And I think that like that's a really important lesson to impart, that what we do isn't for us, it's for others. And while that feels good and that's a great endorphin and everything, it's really easy to forget that, right? Like if you're speaking at a rally, those people aren't cheering for you, they're cheering for the ideas that you profess, that sound good, right? And so I think to remember, it's never about you, ever. And that it's about love, and it's about freedom. because if it ever deviates from those things, it becomes about self and control. And control leads to authoritarianism and fascism. Right? Like those actions people see in the violence that I've partaken in, it's not because like, ooh, that's fun. It sucks. It's horrible. I hate hurting people. Every time I've hurt people, I cry. like I'm a 52-year-old man. Like I will punch somebody, I will go around the corner and I will cry and shake it out of my system. I hate that. Right? But do I hate that more than I hate letting groups of people run around, say the N-word and go back to your country and terrorizing other people more? No, I don't hate that more. I hate the terrorizing people more. So I'll go punch that person to make them go away, to leave these people alone. So it's just what we do is for love. What I do is for love.
Very, very understandable and very courageous. I'm glad that you gave me the privilege of bringing you on and speaking with you for these last minutes or so.
Hour and a half. Wow. Thank you so much for having me. You know what? If you send me a mailing address, like through our own private correspondence, I am happy to get a book out to you tomorrow. They are a little thick though. So I'm happy.
It's not as big as Atlas Shrugged, so I'm fine.
No, yeah. Oh my God. That was a hard book to get through.
So
oh yeah, I once read a book by a man named Ken Follett, who he excels in writing marathon books. So anything over like 1,000 pages, right? And his book was called The Tower, and it was all about the 300 or 400 years it took to build a tower in England. Like, I got through it all, but let's just talk about that. Building a tower is not that interesting.
Yes, I would be glad to, and not only do I want to read your book, but I would love to have you back on the show.
Absolutely, sir. I'm happy to come back.
All right, and I will definitely get back to you with my information. I appreciate your time. Do you have any final thoughts or words for our audience tonight?
Couple of things. Okay, I hate to do this, but time to practice a little bit of capitalism. If you're really interested in what happened here in Portland, please grab my book. You can find it at antifascistmemoir.com. You can engage with me on things like Instagram or X at Luis the Leftist. And lastly, we're this shit is close, bro. You guys, right? Everyone knows where I stand. I am not necessarily pro Kamala Harris. Okay, not all colored folk are all down folk. All soul folk are down for folk, right? And if you don't know what that means, think about it for a minute. But we can't, like, man, these people, Kamala nor Trump, they don't give a shit about us. They're two sides of the same coin, right? You heard me and this gentleman talk about people that will betray us from within, right? People of color betrayed movements of color. Kamala spent her time sticking brown men and men of color in jail and glorifying it. Trump hates us. We're just servants to Trump. Like, there is no like that black dude who was like black guy for Trump. Dude, what kind of bootlicker is that? Right? Like, that dude's not gonna free you. That dude's gonna make it worse. But you know what? You're going to think you're free because you might have some privileges than other people, right? Do you think that, like, I often thought that, like, you guys, do you think that house slaves back in the day thought that they were better off than like field slaves? Do you think that that there wasn't some recognition of like, yo, we're all slaves? Because we are all slaves, guys. And we are the longest standing republic in this history. And we have a table that's got room for everybody. Okay? You don't have to agree with somebody. You can look at me, you can look at other people and be like, wow, that shit is weird. Because you know what, Nebraska? I am weird, Nebraska. I got fucking nose rings and hand tattoos, face tattoos in Nebraska. I'm a fucking weirdo. But you can't stop me from living my life. You can't stop me from loving who I want to love, living where I want to live, saying what I want to say, and working where I want to work. And I can't do that to you either. Fuck, let's just get along. Thank you. Sorry, thank you. But like, yeah, like that, like, yeah. You know?
Hey, well, once again, I'd like to thank you for your time and giving us a lot of insight. And after the election, we shall talk again.
Yeah. Hey, let's all be safe, right? Right? Because I mean, and I'll say this. This is to my people now, okay? This is to the leftists. Yo, black men, brown men are still dying, still going to jail, still wrongfully accused. We need you guys to really work with us. Any interaction that I or this gentleman has with the police could be our last. So, white liberals, don't take us for granted, and don't just come use us because it's fucking election time and then throw us away like you always fucking do. Because we're getting tired of being thrown away. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your time, sir. You have a great evening, a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Hey, maybe we'll see a Niners Steelers play Super Bowl.
Hey, how about that? How about that? You know, that would be in my lifetime that would be great.
Hey, the AFC, you guys can take it. All right, thank you, sir.
Good luck Sunday.
Thank you. Good luck to y'all.
All right, you have a good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And that was Mr. Luis-Enrique Marquez. And I thank him so much for his time tonight. And I thank you for listening. I hope we brought some clarification to you. And as I said, I intend to have Mr. Marquez back. So look forward to our upcoming program after the election. And thank you once again for your time and for your patience. Have a great night, everyone. I shall see you soon.